The black glass skin of the tower was lost in swirling copper-gray fog, a toxic broth that stripped varnish from steel and lungs from the unmasked. Only within the service shafts, those ribbed arteries that climbed forever, did anything move with purpose. Elevators, thousands of them, threaded upward and downward without end, each car bearing the colors of a guild. Their bronze bells and humming motors were the only voices allowed to echo here, because silence was the first law of the elevator wars. Burst a cable, jam a counterweight, cut off a rival's oxygen, but never, ever speak above a whisper. Mara Glenn, third-rank pilot of Chain's Mercy, knew the sound of a dying car better than she knew her own heartbeat. She stood in the service bay on level 5187, listening to the faint stutter reverberating up the shaft. Someone, somewhere below, had severed another lift. The echoes came in waves, like a slow drumbeat announcing the end of 40 lives. She swallowed, tasting copper from the recycled air. 8 hours earlier, a runner had slipped her a waxed envelope with the guild seal pressed deep in violet ink. "Your mother's air credits expire next cycle," the note read. "Bring the turbine plans or watch her choke." Instructions followed. Infiltrate the gleaming ascendants. Copy schematics for a next-generation purifier, rumored to be installed on level 5600, then return before dawn. It was signed in the cursive hand of Preceptor Halstein, Chain's Mercy's elder, so Mara waited now inside Dock 19, alone but for her elevator. The car's brass skin was dulled by use, its filigree etched with chain links, the guild's sigil. She ran fingertips across the emergency tank at her hip, confirming the mask hose sat coiled and ready. Outside the shaft, the world was poison. Inside, it was politics. A soft chime announced clearance from the dispatch tower above. She slid the grilled doors aside, stepped into the cage, and closed herself off from everything except the vertical. A lever notched into her palm. She tapped the code for silent mode. 3 short presses, too long. The motor engaged without fanfare, and gravity released its grip. Most people feared unending ascent. Mara found comfort in it. Each floor was a fleeting whisper against the mesh walls. 5188, 5189, 5190. Every number a hymn, every passing hatch a confession. Stories claimed there was a bottom once, buried beneath centuries of added layers, but no one alive had ever reached it. Likewise, rumor named a top, a paradise of untainted air and actual sunlight. Yet the fog never thinned, and the elevators never stopped. The tower simply was. A single yellow light blinked on the control panel, a coded warning. Someone had spliced into the line ahead. Mara slowed, coaxing the brake pads gently, until inertia matched thought. She killed the cabin lamps, and became another shadow in the shaft. After a moment, a rival carriage glided past downward, polished chrome, walls glowing white, the gleaming ascendants. Through the lattice she glimpsed their pilot, face hidden by a mirror visor, palms gloved in pearl leather. No passengers. He ferried cargo only. Air tanks, gleaming like organs in an icebox. Chain's Mercy hadn't obtained fresh cylinders in 3 months. Their ranks wheezed behind patchwork filters, selling rides cheaply to the desperate, always 5 seconds from suffocation. The Ascendants, in contrast, stood radiant near the tower summit, bartering clean breaths for secrets and flesh. A new purifier would tip the scales from survival to dominion, and Mara had been ordered to steal it. The Ascendant car vanished downward. Mara exhaled and nudged her lever forward. Her own cabin resumed its climb, a slow drumbeat of gears and cables. At level 5420, she eased into a maintenance alcove and parked. A tangle of auxiliary ladders veined the shaft's margins, leading to smuggler corridors and forgotten vents. She strapped her portable oxymask across mouth and nose, checked the twin needles, pressure sufficient for 6 hours of labor, then keyed the cage doors. The hum of turbines passed through the walls like thunder in a cathedral. She stepped onto a service rung. The air out here felt heavier, tinged with sweet rot from the fog infiltrating microfractures of concrete. Her path wound upward through throat-tightening darkness, broken intermittently by crimson emergency beacons. Some 2 levels above, voices murmured. Even hushed, they carried along the steel. Mara flattened herself against a girder and listened. Second purifier feeds directly into their spinal vents. Outputs triple our best models, said one speaker. Another answered, muffled by mask. Council decreed all surplus goes topward. We guard intake shafts and we get paid. Simple. Footsteps receded. Mara waited out 20 heartbeats, then resumed crawling until she reached a narrow hatch stamped with the Ascendant sigil. A sunburst, half eclipsed by a crown. She tested the latch, locked by magnetic seal. From her belt, she produced a coil of copper fibers ending in an alligator clip. She pierced insulation, found live current, and bled it, counting seconds until the seal hissed open. Inside was a ventilation causeway, bright with sterile light. Metal grated underfoot. Hot air smelled of lithium and orchids. The latter, a trademark fragrance, pumped through Ascendant decks to mask the scent of chemical scrubbers. Mara followed the corridor until the floor curved downward into a chamber suspended over nothing. A bubble of tempered glass fused to struts, granting an obscene view of fog swirling beyond. In the center, the purifier. It was smaller than she expected, a matte black obelisk 2 meters tall, surrounded by concentric rings of silver mesh. Plasma filaments danced inside its core, splitting toxins from oxygen. Whoever engineered it had mastered destructive beauty. A single technician in white coveralls inspected readouts. Mara drew a retractable garrote, slipped behind, and tightened until the technician slumped silent. She eased the body down, mindful of cams. A quick scan showed 4 optic eyes in the ceiling, blinking green. Hallstein had supplied spoof emitters, tiny mirrors that repeated the last frame of footage. She stuck them over the lenses and held her breath while data loops froze. Now the machine. She needed schematics, not the unit itself. A panel on its base bore a tiny port. Mara slotted in a sand-grain drive, waited for the silent handshake, and watched blue progress lines bloom on her wrist console. 90 seconds. Her gaze drifted past the glass floor to the vast shaft below. Through layers of fog, elevator cars crisscrossed like votive candles, drifting on black water. Each belonged to a guild with its own creed, its own grudges. The wars never ended, because the tower itself would not let them. The console pinged. Download complete. She retracted the drive, pocketed it, and turned. Straight into the mirror visor of the pilot she'd passed earlier. His pearl-gloved fist struck her throat. Air fled before she could scream. She backpedaled, colliding with the purifier. Alarm chimes erupted, strobing red across the bubble. He advanced, knife glinting. Instead of a guild emblem, his breast carried the sigil of the High Council, 3 nested circles. Mara realized he wasn't Ascendant. He was something worse, an auditor, enforcer of the unspoken law that no guild should dream too high. He lunged. She twisted, feeling edge slice shoulder. Blood warm inside clothing. Pain sharpened reflex. She slammed elbow into his visor, cracking polycarbonate. Glass spidered but held. He retaliated with a boot to her ribs, driving her onto the glass floor. It flexed, but didn't shatter. Beyond the alarm's wail, Mara sensed the purifier's hum, changing pitch. Her fall had jarred something. Pressure values scrolled crimson on the console. The auditor noticed, eyes widening behind broken visor. "Idiot," he rasped. He moved to stabilize output. Mara drew breath through her mask and dove at the purifier's primary conduit. One savage yank tore the braided hose free. Turquoise plasma geysered, sizzling air into white mist. The bubble room filled with ozone and sparks. Filament lines snapped in a daisy chain. She and the auditor both staggered. The purifier shrieked, a machine discovering pain. "Stop!" he coughed. "Can't," Mara answered. She kicked the console, smashing screens. There was strategy in the chaos. If she couldn't leave with the plans, she could ensure nobody would. But the drive in her pocket still held the blueprint. Halstein would have that much. The auditor tackled her from behind. They skidded against frosted glass, grappling like insects inside a lamp. His knife flashed again, aiming for the hose linking her mask to the tiny tank. She grabbed his wrist, redirected, and the blade punched the floor, cracking it. Fog pressure outside seized the fracture, eager fingers prying. Cracks blossomed. The floor sagged. The auditor scrambled away, but Mara kicked his knee. Ligaments popped, and he collapsed, howling. She crawled toward the hatch, half blind from aerosolized coolant. The purifier detonated in a silent blossom, venting plasma downward. Heat glazed the bubble. Glass failed. Everything fell. Mara plunged through shrapnel and scalding air. Instinct found a steel cable slicing the void. She latched on, gloves smoking. Momentum spun her, ripped skin. But she slowed, slid, finally stopped near level 5400. Above, the bubble room was gone, an empty ring of molten supports. Fog rushed to claim the space, swallowing orange embers. Somewhere below, the auditor's scream ended abruptly. Mara's tank hissed its dwindling supply. She unbuckled a bootstrap, looped it around cable as friction brake, and rappelled onto a maintenance balcony. A hatch door hung crooked, blast bent. She squeezed through. Beyond lay a deserted concourse, lined with obsidian tiles and orchid planters. Emergency strobes painted everything blood red. Automated shutters rattled closed, sealing compartments, trying futilely to contain contamination. The purifier's destruction had poisoned the ascendants' upper decks, injecting raw fog into their lungs of glass and brass. Mara smiled grimly. The wars were no longer silent, but her mission was unfinished. She limped to a communications kiosk and unscrewed its panel. Inside, a fiber trunk pulsed with data. She jacked in her wrist console, pinged Chain's Mercy encryption. Static. Then Halstein's rasp. Report. Plan secured, Mara whispered. Ascendant purifier is ashes. Multiple deck breaches. Fog infiltration. A pause. Return, child. Quickly. Elevators are at war. As if in answer, distant booms reverberated through the tower. Rival guilds seizing opportunity. Cables cut. Counterweights sabotaged. Cabins hijacked. Mara severed link, replaced panel, and hobbled toward the closest shaft. Level access signage read 5398. Her own cage waited far below, but any car would suffice now. She found a public bank. 6 bronze doors, lights scrolling nonsense where floor numbers once displayed. Central dispatch algorithms had likely crashed. She pried open the third door with a hydrant key. No car sat behind it, only darkness and the mild updraft of endless void. Far beneath, gears growled. She heard voices, angry, gunfire dampened by velvet air. Mara checked her tank again. 15 minutes. Not enough to descend by ladder. She needed controlled fall. She secured her harness to the doorframe, clipped secondary line to a standby counterweight rail, and leapt. Gravity seized, sending her zip-lining downward past blurred hatches. Wind roared inside mask. Sparks sprayed where trolley touched rail. She clenched teeth, counting levels, 5380, 5370, 5360, eyes watering from speed. At 5342, she saw her own lift, the chain's mercy cage, parked mid-shaft, lights dark, doors ajar. She pulled manual brake, shoulder nearly torn from socket, and slammed to a halt opposite the car. A quick pivot swung her across the gap. Inside smelled of oil and familiar neglect. She sealed door, keyed override, and pumped reserve batteries. Lamps flickered to life, showing blood across her tunic. No time for pain. "Home," she whispered, and engaged descent. The shaft lurched. Motors obeyed. She dropped like a stone on strings, past deck after deck. Outside, fog crept through brand-new cracks in the tower skin, mixing with curling orchid fragrance. Sirens wailed. A jolt almost threw her. Main cable vibrated with harmonic thrumming. Some saboteur above clipping strands. She hammered full throttle. The car screamed downward, levels blurred, 5300, 5200, 5150. She felt cable tension lighten, heard fiber sing-song of metal unraveling overhead. If the cord snapped, she'd plummet until emergency grippers bit the rails, unless those too were fouled. She braced knees. "Not yet," she told the machine. The cable snapped. Whiplash hurled the car into free fall. Automatic brakes sparked but failed to bite, clogged with powdered rust from last year's shortage. Mara yanked manual lever. Metal fangs clamped, carving twin bright lines down guide rails. Deceleration crushed her to floor, bones singing. The car shuddered to halt at level 5111, halfway into the hatch. She pried doors, rolled onto platform as the cabin groaned, then tore away and tumbled further into darkness. Chain's mercy station lay only 4 decks below. She took stairs, each step stabbing ribs. Members lined corridors, pilots, stewards, and breath-truthers hunched over warped maps. Some carried bolt cutters, others clutched children. All wore masks, stitched so many times they resembled spiders' nests. Hallstein awaited in the hall of pulleys, his thin face backlit by gas lamps. "The drive," he whispered. Mara pressed it into his palm. He slotted into a projector. Blue wireframes bloomed on screen. Purifier schematics, parts lists, fabrication equations. "We can build it," said an engineer, awe cracking her voice. Hallstein nodded. "We will, but not for ourselves alone. Tonight, every guild tastes fog. Balance is broken. The council will descend to restore it. When they do, we show them we can breathe without their blessing." Mara met his eyes. "Balance never existed. We're rats in a box, fighting for crumbs of oxygen. Then we smash the box." Outside, another explosion rattled walls. Someone had blown a main relay. The lights guttered, leaving only instrument glow. Hallstein raised his voice. "Pilots, secure every shaft between here and 5200. Rig counterweights as hammers. The council rides armored cars. Let the rails become their tomb." Cheers erupted, muffled by masks. Tools clanged, chains rattled. Mara sank onto a bench, adrenaline ebbing, pain flowering fresh. A medic stitched her shoulder with cold wire, injected coagulant, and taped ribs. Through haze, she watched guild artisans parsing the purifier design, printing sections with scrap resin, forging filters from salvaged mesh. For the first time, she sensed more than survival. Direction. But doubt lingered. Destroying a purifier had unleashed fog on tens of thousands above. Were the Ascendants not prisoners too? Did they deserve choking because they sat nearer false heaven? Her mother's rasping cough echoed memory. In the tower, mercy was a currency long devalued. Midnight, scout bells rang thrice, warning code, council cars inbound. Mara pushed onto shaky legs. She claimed fresh mask, slid new air canister home. Capacity, 4 hours. Enough to see dawn or die trying. She entered Dock 3, where engineers had welded iron plates over her elevator car, turning it into a battering ram. A brace of cable cutters protruded like fangs. On her control panel, a crude painted sigil merged chains links with a rising sun. Hope improvised. Hallstein climbed the threshold. You know the shaft better than any, Mara. Lead, and we follow. She gripped the lever. Silent or loud, Preceptor? Loud, he said, eyes bright with reflection of forge glow. Let them hear the tower speak. The doors sealed. Motors roared. The car surged upward, carrying not passengers but revolution. As they ascended, Mara imagined the tower's infinite floors. Children cradling cracked filters, elders trading stories for half a breath, lovers spooning inside maintenance ducts where poison could not find them. She imagined counselors in gold-leaf cabins surrounded by perfumed air, ears deaf to grinding cables. The elevator guilds had waged silent wars for centuries, but the fog was patient. Tonight, it would be their ally. A flash ahead, armored cars descending, floodlamps hot and white. Chain's Mercy formation split, 2 flanking, Mara's car in center. She keyed clamps, released the braking magnets, and free-dropped 20 meters. Momentum gathered like thunder. Impact. Steel shrieked. Rails buckled. Council cars imploded, spewing glass, copper, and breathless men into the abyss. Above, more alarms, more shouts, more cracks in the tower's unending throat. Mara's car rocked, then settled. Instruments blared red, but still she had control. She gazed through cracked window at falling debris, vanishing into fog. For a heartbeat, she felt the skyscraper inhale, not with turbines or purifiers, but with its own battered lungs. The tower itself was waking. She reset the lever. Next stop, she muttered. The sun. Hallstein's voice across the intercom came steady. Whether we reach it or bring it down to us, let's finish this climb. The elevator rose, a bullet of rust and hope aimed at a mythic ceiling. Outside, poisoned clouds swirled, yet inside every breath tasted like possibility.